All right, good evening, everybody. This is the Red Wing Public Schools regular school board meeting on Tuesday, January 19th, 2021 at 6 p.m. I will call this meeting to order and it is 6:01. The first item on our agenda is to take roll call. Mr. Bryant?
Here.
Nikki Buck is not able to join us this evening. Mr. Derricks?
Here.
Ms. Ostendorf?
Here.
Ms. Tower is also not able to join us, and Ms. Tift?
Here.
And Chair is here. So we have 5 members present, 2 absent. We will go ahead and stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. I have asked Jennifer to go ahead and read our vision for the evening.
The mission of the Red Wing Public Schools is to educate and inspire all students as they realize their full potential and become respectful, responsible, and productive citizens.
Thank you so much. The agenda is posted on our website. Are there any changes to the agenda for this evening?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
may we include the approval or discussion of the committee assignments under 4 point, what is it, 4 point, too many nut pages, under, or is it not 4 point, under whenever we start talking about the committee assignments under school board reports, 2.4. So add that for our test to have any discussion and or approve the committee assignments that we.
I'm sorry, where did you want that inserted, Jim?
I believe it's under, I think it's under 2.4 under school board reports. I believe that's where it's located.
Okay. Any other changes to the agenda? Or
No other changes for me, Pam.
Okay. Then I am looking for a motion to approve the agenda as amended with the addition of a discussion and approval of the committee assignments under 2.4.
Anna will make that motion.
I'll second.
Motion made by Anna, seconded by Jim. Any other discussion? All right, we will begin the roll call vote then with Ms. Tift.
Aye.
Mr. Bryant?
Aye.
Mr. Derricks?
Aye.
Ms. Ostendorf?
Aye.
And Chair votes aye. So the agenda is approved. First item on our agenda is the educational plan. It's just in our board packet as always for reference. The next piece is recognitions and upcoming events. Does anybody have anything they'd like to share?
Madam Chair, I'll just have a little comment. That's all.
Yep.
If I may. I didn't put my name in the queue yet, so.
That's all right.
You and I, we had a meeting this morning at the high school, and as we all know, today's the first day of the again for 5th through 12, and then K and 3 and 4 attended full time along with K through 2. I did have the pleasure to walk down the high school, just kind of walk down, visit with people in the administration office, and as coming out, there was some students with donuts that they do on a regular basis. Emmett knows about this. And a young lady asked me, she said, would you like a donut? And I passed, just so everybody has. Rest assured, I didn't have one. But I did ask her, I said, I don't know who it was, very nice young lady. I said, are you happy to be back in school? Absolutely, she said, just beamed with the fact that she could be back in school. So just something I thought was just very nice that just answered it immediately after I asked the question. So.
Yes. I was up there as well, and it definitely felt like the first day of school all over again, and you could feel the excitement in the hallways. So it was really great to see and feel that. And I know that every one of us that I'm seeing on the screen right now is super happy that we've been able to move this forward. So welcome back to school. Any other recognitions or upcoming events? I will just remind our board that we do have our Minnesota School Boards Association Leadership Conference again this Thursday. Many of us, if not most or all of us, attended this last Thursday, and it will continue this coming Thursday and then the following Thursday. We had some great speakers and some breakout sessions already, so it was already time well spent. Next year we'll be hopefully back in person, but it's a very wonderfully done virtual event. So hats off to MSBA for doing that. And it certainly does take a lot of effort to pull something like that off. So thank you to them. Any other recognitions or upcoming events? I will note that in your Sunday e-news, you will start seeing competitions and activities listed there. And while there's a limit on spectators in most venues right now, you can live stream many of those events. So we'd really encourage you to support our wingers through virtual means if you at all can. And it's certainly exciting as well to see those kids back out in action. So go wingers. Any other recognitions or upcoming events? All right, seeing none, I have not received any public comment, which is the next item on our agenda. Have you received any, Superintendent Anderson?
I did not receive any.
Okay. We always welcome public comment. We don't have any this evening, but we'll move on in our agenda to school board reports. Do we have any reports from any committees this evening? Finance Committee? Holly is not here, but anybody else on that committee have anything to share?
We will meet next week, next Monday night. Board Member Tiff and Board Member Tower and myself at 4:45.
What date is that, Jim?
Monday, the 25th, if that's a Monday, whatever that day, Monday is next week.
I think it's Nikki that's joining you too.
Oh, okay.
Instead of me.
My mistake. My apology.
That's okay.
I didn't have my list in front of me. So Board Member Buck will be there with us. So thank you.
All right.
Thanks for clarifying that.
Yes, thank you. Operations Committee, any updates from operations?
No, we meet first Monday of February.
All right.
The first, 4:45, and that's Board Member Dierks and Board Member Tiff. Okay, I got that one right.
Sorry, I'm not on. Oh, yeah, I guess I am on operations. Never mind.
Personnel Committee, I don't believe we have any updates. We usually meet on the first Monday of every month, so that will also be on 2/1 at 3:45. Anything from Legislative and Policy Committee?
No, we have not met.
All right, that is up and coming. Negotiations, we do have a meeting coming up with the cooks this coming Thursday, so we will start that meeting virtually. Any other committee updates that anyone would like to share at this time?
The Community Rec Board meets this Thursday, so we haven't met for quite a while with that, and we're doing it virtual.
Do you mean the Community Education and Recreation Board, or do you mean the Joint Powers?
Joint Powers.
Okay.
Thank you. With the City of Red Wing.
Yeah, okay.
Board Member Tower and I are on that. So.
Okay, great. On Thursday. All right. And then we do need to have some action. We need to take action on the list of committees that we have been talking about and assigned to for this coming year. It was sent to all of you earlier today. And is it an extra, Karsten, in the agenda?
Yes, it is.
Okay, it is. It's listed as an attachment then to our board packet. Is there any discussion with that list? It lists every committee and who is on each committee. Is there any discussion on that?
We don't have building liaisons assigned.
Right.
Do
Yeah.
we need to do that
Yeah.
today?
I purposefully left that off. Number one, for COVID reasons for right now. And number two, we used it last year and it wasn't really all that effective or useful. I think we can all be liaisons for all buildings and all community members. So it seemed to me that, I mean, it was something that we tried last year and it didn't really work out that well. So I left it off this year. If there's no other discussion on this list, then I would look for a motion to approve the list as presented.
I'll make a motion to approve.
All right, do I have a second?
Anna, second.
Any other discussion on the committee list? All right, we'll take a roll call vote to approve that list as presented. This time we'll start with Mr. Bryant.
Aye.
Mr. Derricks,
Aye.
Ms. Ostendorf,
Aye.
Ms. Tift,
Aye.
and chair votes aye, so that passes 5-0. Next up is the administrative reports.
I provided a written summary of regarding several topics, so I won't cover that, but just to let you know that anyone on the board or the public can review those written notes. I will just mention two different areas. First of all, compensatory revenue. We are down nearly $300,000 compared to last year, largely because there was no need for people to fill out the free and reduced lunch application because everyone was receiving those meals for free anyway. However, Brent Lexfold, our nutrition services director, did lead a group of people to make calls to every family in the district to encourage them to fill out applications. As a result of that work, it would have been $400,000 down. Instead, we're only $300,000 down. So it made a $100,000 difference. So I'd like to thank Brent and all the employees who worked on that. We did receive a notice that we have a preliminary estimate of nearly $1.5 million in round two ESSER amounts from the federal government. That's related to some COVID relief. And we're still waiting for specific guidance as far as how that money can be spent this year. In addition to the written report, I do have three other items to mention. First of all, the Minnesota State High School League did send out some guidance as far as what students can and cannot do during the Pledge of Allegiance. And it wasn't a requirement for coaches to read that statement to our student athletes, but Mr. Hartman did encourage that, not because we're trying to encourage people to kneel during the Pledge of Allegiance, but because there might be student athletes from other districts who might do so, or maybe even some of our own kids. So it's more of an educational tool to our student athletes. So just wanted to disclose that happened. Also, Chris Palmatier is on the call, and I'm not asking him to report anything at this time, but he did volunteer to work with a group of people to consider some playground options for Twin Bluff School beginning next year. And so don't be surprised if you see some requests for fundraising events that should be coming our way. And Chris, I'm hoping, can work with community people to lead the effort. But Chris was willing to at least jumpstart that work. And we will also invite operation committee members to review plans and to provide some suggestions. So that'll be coming up starting in February. And then finally, as everyone knows, we did have an emergency distance learning day on Friday due to weather. And so that was kind of a learning experience because we're not allowed to do e-learning plan days, but we can do these emergency distance learning days. And so that's what we did on Friday. And it actually went really well. Most of our staff members were either assigned to distance learning expectations or they completed online staff development. So those are the three additional items that were not in writing.
Thank you, Superintendent Anderson. Does anybody have any comments or questions for him about any of those items? I'll just say, Mr. Palmetier, thank you so much for leading that effort on the playground equipment. As we'll see later on down in our plans on the agenda this evening, we're going to talk about options for the fall, and one of those options would be to continue K through 6 in your building, and I think that is a great idea to continue talking about and thinking about playground equipment there, especially if we're going to have those little kids back in your building next year. So thank you for thinking about that and heading that up. I appreciate that. Any other questions about administrative reports? All right, then moving on to business, the business item 3.1, policy 808 regarding COVID-19 face coverings. I'll turn that back over to you, Mr. Anderson.
And I'll mention that Shonda Jorgensen, our health and safety consultant, is on the call as well if there are specific questions. As you know, we did approve a face coverings policy earlier this year, but the Minnesota School Board Association on Friday issued an update to that particular policy. Those changes are reflected in the proposed policy in board book. Also over the weekend, the COVID response team reviewed MSBA suggestions and made some additional suggestions. Those are highlighted in yellow in that proposed policy. So I think they're all sensible changes that are consistent with Minnesota Department of Health and Minnesota Department of Education. But we'll definitely take any questions that anyone might have. Well, while you're pondering, typically we go through a first reading and second reading before approving a policy. We really felt it was important to provide an updated policy as soon as possible so we can get it to parents and staff members sooner rather than later. So that's why we did not go through the first two readings. As a result of a quote unquote emergency approval of a policy, we would need to go through the full process within 1 year. Hopefully we won't have to deal with that in a year, but that's typically how it works with our policy approvals.
Anna has a comment or question.
I'd like to go ahead and make a motion to accept the revised policy.
All right, motion made by Anna. Do I have a second?
Tift, second.
Thank you. Any other discussion on policy 808 with the revision of the face covering policy? Any other discussion? Any other discussion? All right, seeing none, we'll take a roll call vote. The motion is to approve the revised policy 808. We'll start with you, Mr. Derricks.
Aye.
Ms. Ostendorf?
Aye.
Ms. Tift?
Aye.
Mr. Bryant?
Aye.
And chair votes aye. That passes 5-0. Thank you. All right, return to school. That is the next business item up for conversation.
I included this as an agenda topic as a placeholder just in case we had to take action on something. I don't have any specific recommendations, but I wanted to share at least the latest COVID data, including the county COVID rates. Just as an FYI, yesterday was a holiday for our county employees, and so I just got the latest information this morning and posted it as kind of as a late addition this morning. So you can see on the COVID data sheet for January 19th, you can see everything listed in the very last column. That's for the period ending January 23rd. And some of the data is not there because some of the reporting is actually for information from 2 weeks earlier, and so that's why not every data point is included. For example, the actual county COVID rates, which are now 69.67, are listed under the period ending January 1st. And that's the latest data that we have. And really, that's all I have for the return to school, except I can say that the principals, just as described by Jim earlier in the meeting, were thrilled to have kids back in the classroom. So, and I know how much work all of our employees have done to get ready for this day, but there are a lot of smiles, a lot of positive comments about what happened.
Arlen.
Yeah, can you maybe just update for us here a little bit more? Tomorrow will be a COVID testing day for staff and people that want to participate every other week. I know I got information where the locations are, but I have been unable to see how you make an appointment as far as the board is eligible to take this testing also. And then maybe you can update that people, how many vaccines we got, I think, if you're aware of all that.
Sure. I can answer the second question, and then perhaps Shonda can give more information about the actual testing because she had done a video. But I'll answer the vaccination question first. The state of Minnesota is undertaking a pilot program to distribute vaccinations, the Pfizer vaccination, to school employees across the state. Because the state of Minnesota does not have enough vaccinations, they had to proportionally distribute them. Red Wing Public Schools received 8 vaccinations for our 700 or 800 employees. And so those 8 people who were highest on the priority list did receive a message yesterday that they could set up an appointment if they desired. And, for anyone who says no to that particular offer, then we'll go to our priority 2 list to see who else can take the vaccine. So everything was done quickly because we did not receive the conference call until yesterday morning at 8 o'clock. The information was supposedly embargoed until 2 p.m. Somebody from a different district released the information to the media before that embargo time. And so then that kind of opened the door for all schools to release it a little bit earlier. But literally we received a notice starting at 8 in the morning, and we had to prioritize, make the offers to employees, and then the employees had to provide a response to the state by 11:59 p.m. last night. So it's a very short turnaround. Thankfully, our COVID response team was all over it. We'd done some preliminary work, and so we were able to accomplish that in short order. But the short answer to your question, Arlen, is that we received the 8 vaccines, but we're hoping that this trial run will enable the whole state to really work efficiently and effectively when more vaccines are available. And Shonda, I don't know if you have anything to add about vaccinations, but I know you can also provide information about the testing program.
Nope, that was, it was 8 a.m. and we got it was later, and Carson's like, just wait till 2, you've got work to do. And then it was released early, and so we got on it right away. And we, we identified who we thought were the top priority. And as far as I know, we were able to fill all 8 spots. So that's nice. We're not missing out on an opportunity for someone. It went really well, actually. It was, it moves quick. Things change every day. And so we've got a great team, and we've got, it's really easy to work with them. Is there any questions on it? Do you, process or anything you have on how that's working? And we don't know when the next time it'll be offered. We don't know if this is going to be a weekly thing, or is this going to be just we'll wake up on a Monday morning and they'll say, okay, you got this many more slots. Who's your next priority? And so we identified our top priority, and what we're doing now is we're identifying obviously next top and just kind of working our way down the list. And hopefully it gets to the point where they'll just say, okay, we have enough for everybody. We're coming to your school. And that's what we originally planned on. And so we won't have to do this whole, we're picking individual people. It's not easy. We don't like doing that, but hopefully it'll get to the point where, they come to our school, they vaccinate us, and we're good to go. So. Okay.
Shonda, did those folks already receive the vaccination?
No, they start. They had to sign up by midnight last, or 11:59 last night, and then they will receive an email or a text, and then they have to respond to that within 24 hours to set up an appointment. And they are reserved, so it'll start Thursday, and they're reserving evening and weekend appointments for school educators. So they don't have to leave school to get this done. Most probably our testing site right now is in Rochester. So they're going to have to, go out of their way to do this. But they're going to leave those open so that they're able to do that. It's not, oh, you have to leave work, we have to find a substitute, that kind of thing. So I haven't heard from anyone that they've got an appointment. It's now kind of between them and the state. We're out of it.
Okay.
Yep.
So they come in to administrate the vaccination.
They go somewhere to get it.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. Yep. And so hopefully sooner rather than later, we're going to end up getting people to come into our school to administer it. It's just now they've got the vaccines. Let's get some of these educators vaccinated. So you come to our site, we'll take care of it. And at the time they do their first vaccination, they'll set up the appointment for the second vaccination. So it's already set up. They don't have to worry about, okay, has it been 3 weeks? Where am I at? So.
Great. This is great news and a step in the right direction.
It is. It would be nice if we had a few more to give out, but unfortunately, it's based on population and how many we have, and we'll get there.
Got to start somewhere. So this is encouraging anyway. Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
Other questions for Shonda? And then were you going to go into the COVID testing a little bit, Shonda?
Yep. So what Jody and I did is when this was offered to us, we had a meeting with each building, and we kind of left it up to the buildings on who's going to run it. We told them how it has to be run, how to staff it, that kind of thing. But we left it up to the buildings to say, how is it going to work with your schedule? Your staff, when they come in, when, the parents are watching the kids so the teacher can have their prep time, that kind of thing. So figure out what times work best for you. And so each, the building COVID coordinator and then the school nurse all set up kind of their own schedules. And Arlen did ask for it earlier this week, and I do have it. I can send it out to everyone. Ideally, you get it done at the school you're at. So everyone got an email from their COVID team, their building COVID team, and they've signed up, and however the building handled it. But as far as, the school board, I would suggest just whichever school you want to get tested at, call the school nurse or the building COVID coordinator, which is usually the assistant principal or the student services coordinator, and just say, I want to get tested. When can I come in? And they've got blocks open where they're testing, 6 people every 20 minutes. They're testing 10 people every 20 minutes, however they set it up. But that's not limited. You're not limited to those times. The nurse has these tests in her office. So if you can stop by at 3:30 in the afternoon, that's the only time, you can just go to the nurse and take the test then. So obviously on that day, we test every Wednesday. We're sending out the tests at the end of the day. So there's going to be a cap on time. You can't come in at 8 o'clock. But work it out with that school, whichever school you prefer. If you live closer to Burnside, go to Burnside. If you live, whichever one works best for you. So.
Arlen.
Yeah, I was under the impression they prefer appointments because I heard staff had done that to set up a time during the day in those time spans that were given. I don't specifically know who to contact in each building to make an appointment, or are board members able to just show up? And so, as far as also contractors to the district.
Right. We prefer appointments so that we're aware you're coming in. It would be the school nurse really is who you need to call, and we can kind of make a list and provide phone numbers for you if you would like. I was just informed that the elementary nurses are done at 2:30. High school obviously is there till 4, so you have a little bit more leeway. But I can provide the schedule. They prefer you come when everyone else is testing, but that we're not limiting you to that. So yeah, I can provide that information.
Thank you, Shonda. Anything
Yeah, you're
else?
welcome.
Any other updates on the return to school? I do want to take this time to just say thank you. Thank you to our staff, our teachers. It's been such an up and down year. We've been asking a lot of people to keep this this rolling, this business going, and we thank you. I know it's not been easy at all, and I just wanted to take some time to say thank you, because it's hard work, and we appreciate you so much. All right, seeing no other comments, then we'll move on to the consent agenda, which is listed in your board packet. Does anybody have anything they need to or would like to pull from the board pack or the consent agenda? Seeing none, then I will look for a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Anna, so moved.
Motion made by Anna to approve the consent agenda. Do I have a second?
Jim will second.
Thank you, Jim. Any other discussion on the consent agenda? There are 3 retirements listed in our consent agenda to Mickey Gardner and Kathy Welsh and Patty Hupert. And thank you to those 3 individuals. If I could, I would take them off the consent agenda and not approve those. They're very valuable folks in our district. So I just wanted to give a special recognition to those 3 individuals and say thank you to them for their service in our school district. Any other discussion on the consent agenda? All right, we'll take a roll call vote to approve the consent agenda, starting with Ms. Ostendorf.
Aye.
Ms. Tift?
Aye.
Mr. Bryant?
Aye.
Mr. Derricks?
Aye.
And chair votes aye. That passes 5-0. All righty. Next up is donations and grants.
Yeah, I'd like to thank the Christ Episcopal Church in Frontenac for a donation to the high school food pantry, as well as the Jones Family Foundation for a donation for scholarships through Community Education Recreation for English language learners.
Always warms my heart to see this part of our agenda. We have such a great community of givers, so thank you so much to both of those groups. Looking for a resolution to approve the donations and grants.
Jim makes a motion to approve the donations and grants.
Do I have a
submitted this
second?
evening.
Anna,
I'll
second.
Annie beat you, Jennifer. All right, motion to approve the attached resolution accepting donations and grants made by Jim, seconded by Anna. Any other discussion? Seeing none, then we'll start the roll call vote with Jennifer Tift.
Aye.
Mr. Bryant.
Aye.
Mr. Derricks.
Aye.
Ms. Ostendorf.
Aye.
And chair votes aye. That passes 5-0. All right, grade configuration for 21-22. Superintendent Anderson, Chris Palmatier, and George Nemenich. I will turn that over to you 3.
Great, thank you. I'll get started, and then Chris and then George will answer questions and present some information. As you know, on December 21st, the administrative team made a recommendation to the board as far as grade configurations for next year. The recommendation from our team is that we would keep 3 or 4 K-6 elementary schools and then keep 7th grade in the high school for a 7 through 12 setting. And there are a couple of reasons why the recommendation is being made. First of all, we're preparing plans, assuming that we will be fully in person next year. That's our expectation, that's our hope. However, there are a lot of dynamics going on with COVID in terms of the vaccination effectiveness, in terms of new strains, in terms of all sorts of other things. And so we'd like to have some flexibility going into the summer and into the fall, just in case we have to follow social distancing guidelines. The K6 and the 7 through 12 grade configurations enable us to do either. We could do the in-person learning full-fledged, or we could do hybrid learning, because that's what we're doing this year. If we tried to go back to our previous model, or had 5th and 6th grade in Twin Bluff or something like that, we would run into some transportation issues and some hybrid learning issues. So that's one reason. We also believe that we need a longer, more in-depth discussion as far as future grade configurations beginning in the 22-23 school year. We don't want to rush a discussion that we want to take hold for years to come. And so we thought, let's keep it the same for a second year, have a significant discussion starting this summer and throughout for most of next year, so that we can, make some long-term decisions. So again, we want to minimize the number of transitions that our students, parents, and staff members would need to make as we, go into the future. In terms of timing for the decision, the administrative team strongly recommends that we make a decision sooner rather than later, because grade configuration decision will lead the way to making all sorts of other decisions. For example, George needs to do his high school schedule as soon as possible. Staff members want to know where they're going to be working next year, what grade levels, what building, that kind of thing. And of course, we have budget reductions that are coming our way, fairly significant budget reductions. Changing the grade configurations isn't causing the need for those budget reductions. We're going to have to do them regardless. And in order to take our time reviewing possibilities, we want to make the grade configuration sooner so that some of those decisions can take place as well. I did run a preliminary analysis of transportation services. If we kept our own or kept the current arrangement, but lowered the walking zones for grades K through 6 to 1 mile instead of the current 2 miles. And it looks like we could save at least one bus, even with the lower walking zones, if we're fully in person. So that's good news. I did send a request to the transportation routers to see, well, what would it look like if we had 5th and 6th grade, for example, at Twin Bluff? And that takes a few weeks to analyze, and so I'll be getting that information too. But it will not be more efficient than keeping the K6 and 7 through 12 grade configurations. I've already talked about kind of our hope for long-range planning with facilities and some other things. But there are some issues. There are negatives and barriers to the K6 and 7 through 12 grade configurations. And so I do have Chris and George here to talk about some of those barriers and our preliminary thinking as far as how we'll address them. So if I could hand it over to Chris, he can talk about the elementary schools.
Good evening, board members. First of all, it's not lost on me the importance of your decision. I mean, it affects students, it affects staff members, and it affects the community too. So please know that a lot of thought did go into this, trying to figure out what would be the best scenario going into 21-22. And I want you to know that at least from my lens here, I have been focused on 21-22. That's about as far out as I can see right now. And I feel like if we can get that, make that an effective model for our students and our staff, I think we're in a good situation. So again, I want you to know that the proposal that we're talking about is for 21-22. And as Karsten said too, anytime we came up with a problem or thought about how to do this, the lens that we kept coming back to is how can we provide the most flexibility, knowing what we know or don't know at this time. And it kept coming back to our current configuration of K6, 7, 12. That said, there are some improvements that we can do based on our current model with K6, 7, 12. But we really felt like this is the one scenario that we can hang our hat on. And again, the hope is that we're all in.
That's the hope here. And this is the one scenario, as I said, that provides all of that flexibility. Just a reminder, part of this presentation that we have set up had to do with, after we broached this topic with our teachers in December, a lot of this information that I provided to you in that PowerPoint is taken from that. And we tried to put things into buckets, so to speak, because there are certain questions that we just could not answer. And there are certain questions that we can answer. And as I said, I detailed that in the presentation that I had to you. And I would say this too, perhaps, I don't know if this would help make your decision too. This has been a difficult school year. This has been, 30 plus for me. And I can't remember a more unusual, strange year. However, I have seen some absolutely just amazing teaching. Sometimes I think our teachers look more like conductors as they're dealing with the different classes that they have in front of them. So I've really appreciated that. I've appreciated working with new kids, and I've also appreciated getting to know other staff. And I know that my colleagues, other principals, feel the same as well too. As you look at the presentation, and if there's questions that I can answer specific to any one of those buckets, but as I said, we try to divide them in what are the things the board needs to make a decision about, what we can answer as administration, and what the state needs to weigh in on regarding 21-22. So with that, I am open to answering any questions that you may have about the K-6 model and about the presentation that I submitted.
Go ahead, Anna.
Okay, there we go. Yeah, I appreciate all the work that went into this. I am really uncomfortable with the idea of essentially not having a middle school for, a few different reasons. And I guess I'm just wondering, like in the presentation, one of the questions that the staff has and that I have is what's the plan for specials? And to not have an answer for that, I really don't feel comfortable approving this, because I think, this year, of course, a lot of sacrifices have had to be made. And, nobody has had the ideal situation. But I think those specials have had an extra burden put upon them, especially like our arts programming and, the Phi-Ed, where, those things that are sometimes the highlight of a kid's day at school has been very different this year. And, because it had to be. But I'm really uncomfortable with the idea that that might still be taking place next year. And of course, if COVID is still rampant and we need to be in hybrid or whatever, it is what it is. But with that idea that the hope is that things will be more or less normal and we can be in person fully, I'm really nervous about approving this and then inadvertently locking us into a situation where we can't have those things because of the way that it's set up. I know already with elementary being in Sunnyside and Burnside, the art teachers, there's only one art teacher that was having to go back and forth between two schools. Now, if that art teacher is going back and forth between 4 schools, that's minimizing how much time they have. So I guess I'm just wondering, kind of what your thoughts are. I know you don't know yet what the specials are, but are we going to be locking ourselves into a situation where we can't do the things that we want to do because we opt for this choice right now in January?
Okay, a couple of things, Anna. First off, you had said about being uncomfortable when not having a middle school. I am too. I've worked at that place for over 10 years, and I felt like it's been an absolutely great place, and I've enjoyed being there. And I can't tell you how often I walk into the gym or the pool and I go, oh my gosh, I've got this beautiful facility and we're not able to use it right now. As a matter of fact, I was having a conversation with our pool manager about that. So I am attuned to that. I guess my response, and Karsten can probably answer that, whenever we have this conversation, I typically say this is for 21-22, right? right? And that's typically, and as I said, that's my lens as I have this conversation. But I always have to weigh that against, do I need to get kids in school? And if we can get kids in school, that's kind of our North Star. That's our priority. So I'm with you regarding middle school. And I hope I have Karsten's assurance that this is 21-22, and we'll talk about different configurations later because, as I said, there's some great opportunities that our students need to access. In your question specific to specials, I get it, and I hear that on a regular basis too. I know that there's ways that we can improve student access to it. I don't know whether it's a different way of having teachers travel, but again, everything is predicated on that 6-foot social distancing. And so if there's anything that we're locked into, that's kind of what we're locked into right now. I mean, I feel like if I'm planning for next year, if I can use this year as a template, if I'm looking at the way we have it set up right now, and say, for example, if we're locked into this 6 feet, which is not it's dictated to us by the state, it may have to be like that. And I say that unfortunately because I see that. But if there's a way that things can be relaxed and we're able to move more freely, I mean, I can just give you this, Anna. I am committed to having specials or FIAD or whatever, but I would like it to look different too. But to an extent, this is what we're locked into right now. That's probably not a great answer to you, but again, the only assurance that I can give you, Anna, is that I will explore those options with my teachers. That's an assurance that I can give you.
Jim is next in the queue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Anna asked some nice questions there. Appreciate that, addressing those. I like the idea of your forward thinking, looking at, because you're absolutely right, Mr. Palmatier, this is the most unusual year anybody can probably remember in our lifetime. I like the idea that you're looking at this as a way to go. And I'm coming from a slightly different angle. I think our enrollment is decreasing. So it gives us an opportunity to look at how we do things, if we can do them differently, better, safer, however. The other thing I'm also looking at the other side is what Superintendent Anderson's talked about was budget restraints. And I look at the recommendation of the 5 schools. I'd be hard pressed at this time due to the budget constraints that we're going to be facing down the road, keeping a 5th school open, and that being, I'll be honest, Jefferson. How we do that to keep a school open and then cut something else that maybe it's a part of a special or maybe it's something program. So we need to have those discussions as we're going forward, talking about this. And I don't think we're going to decide this tonight. I mean, this is probably a February decision going forward. So I just share that. I appreciate you taking time to look at this. And then Mr. Nemenich, I'll say that I know we haven't heard you, but appreciate your time into diving into us and looking at it as we go forward, because I think our goal as a district is sometime soon could be one day, it could be 6 months, to get kids back in school full time. So, and I appreciate you taking time to listen, try to answer the tough questions. And I commend you for saying, I don't have the answers. And that takes a lot to say that when you take the time to go back and find it out and get it back to those people that asked. So thank you.
And Jim, I as I said, that's why as we fielded questions as an admin team, there were simply questions that we just can't answer. And that's why there's some questions that board members need to answer. And then once you make the decisions, we'll take your guidance and we will try to create the best program that we can given all the constraints. So thank you.
Karsten, you're next, and then Arlen.
Yeah, all the principals realize that 6th grade band and elementary specials are important aspects of the decision. And I know that we are all dedicated to providing the best band experience for sixth graders that we can, and the best specialist experiences that we can. So our preference would be to have those specialist teachers, for example, teaching in their specialist areas. That's what we want. And it might look a little bit different, but we're really aiming for that. So, and that's assuming, of course, that we're fully in person, like we're all planning for. But I just want to make that clear, Anna, we're kind of going into it saying, okay, what could we do? If we have K-6 schools, what could we do so that sixth grade band is still an incredibly meaningful experience? And the same with all of the other specials like art and PE, music, those kinds of things. So I just wanted to make sure that you know that, Anna. And the best solution, though, is to actually work with teachers, not only the specialist teachers, but also the general ed classroom teachers and administrators to see how that can best work.
Because I would assume that if we're back all kids in school all day, every day in the fall, we could have our regular programming. It would just feel or look a little bit different. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's certainly my take. And, Mickle Gardner, who has been such a great pleasure for elementary and high school, is retiring. And so one of the decisions we're going to have to make is what kind of music licensure do we want to replace Mickle? Mickle is a choir person. And, if we're dedicated to providing a great band experience. And so we're going to have to decide together if we want a band teacher or a choir teacher, to replace Mickle. And so that's one of the things that, if we make the decision tonight or in early February, then we can go after, the licenses that we need to make this work well and to come up with a great special schedule.
Well, and I know it's hard to think beyond next year, but I'm thinking that if we can ever get back to our status quo, like this is just another temporary stopgap measure to get to business as usual, is what our goal and our hope is. But also, as I understood and heard you say, this plan for next year is allowing for whatever could happen. If we have
Correct.
to continue what we're doing, this will provide for that. But if we can get everybody in school all day, every day in the fall, which is our goal and what we would like to plan for, this plan provides for that as well. And
Correct.
I know you've probably ad nauseum sat with your admin team and looked at so many scenarios. Is that correct? This isn't just the first and only scenario you've looked at.
I have 5 different scenarios that I wrote on my marker board because they're possibilities for future consideration. But when you actually analyze each one, the only one that gives us the flexibility would be the K-6 and 7 through 12,
Okay.
scenario, because everything else relies on transportation system with transfer buses and large groups of kids on each bus going into the different sites. And that's one of the reasons we run into problems with having entire grades at the middle school, or at Twin Bluff, I should say. So unfortunately, transportation is in some ways driving this, but also the Jefferson School is important because if we have to provide social distancing and we want to keep our elementary kids in person, then we need that extra building, just like we did this year. And so that's why the recommendation is to keep Jefferson, or to include Jefferson if the board approves use of the building, later in the spring or summer, because we don't know what that looks like. So for our planning purposes, we're assuming we will not have Jefferson unless the board decides otherwise. So, but we can wait on that decision a little bit because we need time to figure out exactly what's going to go on with social distancing before we decide that.
Yes, thank you. And the mandates that might come or be continue or be loosened. Thank you. Arlen, you're in the queue.
Thank you. I have my concerns on our specials, but I'm going to give us a little history lesson about Red Wing. Nearly 60 years ago, when I was at Jefferson Elementary School, at that time we had 6 different elementary schools. We had Burnside, Jefferson, Sunnyside, Colville, Hancock, and Washington. And we had specials then. We had Mr. Verkins was an art teacher that traveled between schools. He spent us 1 day a week or whatever it was at Jefferson. Before I go any further, I want to say I'm not advocating in this to keep Jefferson open. I'm just telling you my experience because that's where I was. We had Mr. Smith that came around to do Phi Ed once or twice a week. And we had a couple other specials that came around. And the point is, we had 50% more students in our district then than what we have right now. I graduated with a class of nearly 300. But it did work with people moving from school to school at that time. I'm sure there are ways to do it. Not sure, I can't give you specifics, just like administration can't, but when the time comes, they will be able to come up with some solutions. Will it be the same as now? No. But we can make most of these specials work. I fully believe we will be back to in-person learning for all students next fall, but I'm saying that guardedly because we don't know what the next strike COVID's going to throw at us. But we were able to survive with our specials coming, and I believe we also had, I think in 4th or 5th grade, we also had some orchestra training, very minor, but I think there was people that were learning to play the violin in 5th or 6th grade. We had people that came around to teach that 1 or 2 days a week. So I'm going to put my faith in administration to come up with making this work. I'm fully on board for me to look at next year with our options. And I understand that more than likely Jefferson is going to be shut down next year. But I like the idea that it's available if we get another something thrown at us from COVID coming into next year. But I just wanted to put that out that we did function as a district with 6 different elementary schools, not 4 different ones. And we had 50% more students we have now, and our specials did move from school to school even back then. So there are ways to do it. We'll adapt it, I'm sure, to make it work. And thank you for letting me speak.
I'll just piggyback a little bit what Arlen said. They did have cars back there for people to drive around to the other schools too back then, because I was 2 years behind him, and we had 325 kids that graduated in our class in 1970 something. So
Not the horse and buggy, Jim? All right, George, you're up next.
no.
Okay. Well, so I think you have the presentation that we had put together for the 712, and basically very similar to what Chris mentioned. We kind of gleaned themes from our survey of staff from the what came from that survey that pertained to 712, and really you could kind of see them there. I kind of laid them out, but tech needs, materials and supplies, teaching assignments, class size, scheduling, elective concerns, the lunches, how are those going to operate? A lot of questions, practical questions, right? Those are things that came up and made sense. And so really throughout the presentation, you probably saw a running theme, and I'll get to that here in a second, but I think there's 3 things to look at here. Number one, the big looming question everybody asks, can we fit 712 in the high school building all in, right? We can do that. We have the building space for it. We can make that work. The second question, and this is a biggie, is scheduling. And I think this goes back to what Anna was talking about at the very beginning. And that's that, when there isn't a middle school, what are we doing with our 7-8, right? And so that is definitely a concern of ours. And I don't know, those of you, I know some of the board members who were here last year, right around this time, actually, we were talking about scheduling and things like that. And that's one of the things that we talked about with our 8th grade was to create some type of a middle school feel for our 8th graders, because we knew that was important. So we've done a lot of legwork on planning for middle school grade levels in our building already. So I'm very hopeful. We had a nice meeting the first week back in January with our 7-8 grade level teachers, just talking about some of the things we'd like to see in a schedule that we had planned for originally with before COVID-19 hit, and we had to start scrambling to make plans for the pandemic. But there are some things we can do. We don't necessarily, the 7th and 8th graders don't have to be on the same exact schedule as our high school. We can plan around that. We can create advisory for our 7 and 8 students, and we can shorten up the class periods so they're not so lengthy like the blocks right now, which are very, I think that's a bit taxing on our 7th and 8th graders. So those are some things that we definitely want to consider when we schedule. So we're not going into this saying, okay, 7-12, all right, 7th and 8th graders, you are now plopped into the high school, and now you don't have 4 years of high school or 5, you got 6 now. We're not doing it like that. We want to make sure that our 7th and 8th graders have a feel of just basically a schedule that's going to meet their needs, because they're developmentally very different from our 9 through 12 grade level students. So that's something that we want to address, and we've already started addressing that with our staff. And then the third thing is this is the running theme throughout that whole presentation was, you probably saw this: registration, budget, enrollment. Okay, those 3 things are huge factors in what we will be able to do. Whether it's, as far as staffing, teaching assignments, things like that, that's going to make a difference for us. So I guess, and I know at the very end, you probably saw on the last page, it said, the sooner we can make this decision, the better, so that we know how to, when we go into registration and that registration process, which is actually coming up next month, we want to be able to get some pretty good, a pretty good feel for, the kind of numbers we're going to be looking at, and as far as assignments and what we're going to have for enrollment. Because I know there's going to be some, we talked about this at the last meeting a week ago, but there may be some students who want to do online still, and we want to provide that opportunity for them. So we're going to have to kind of look at that too. So those are all factors that we want to work on, but I think we can't really work on those until we really make a decision about configuration. So that's kind of that. I guess that's why I'm speaking to maybe the immediacy of or the urgency of making this decision would be important. But I totally get having to think about it, because that's a whole different ball game too. So, but anyway, that's kind of our presentation, kind of a summary. So I'll take questions if you have them.
Jim, you're in the queue. And you're muted.
Yep, I saw that after I started talking. Nobody was listening to me, just talking to myself again. And but Mr. Nemenich, thank you for hitting on that 7th and 8th grade feel about the middle school. I appreciate that, and you're absolutely right. A year ago, we were talking about scheduling this different scenario. So my question is to the team, 3 of you, and Mr. Palmetier, it's your school, Twin Bluff. Looking at these schools, the high school is the biggest building we have. The middle school is the next biggest building we have. Have you discussed, you don't tell me tonight, have you discussed keeping all 6th graders at the middle school, keeping K through 6 and all 6th graders at the middle school? One reason, 6th grade band. I just throw it out there. Don't expect an answer unless so I just thought I'd throw it out there.
I understand why you're asking that, but I guess Karsten, would we say that's kind of balled up in a transportation issue as well?
Yeah, I think the answer is yes for this coming year and for subsequent years. Although another variation would be like K4 buildings and then 5 and 6 at Twin Bluff, along with K through 4. But like Chris said, the major stumbling block there is transportation, because this year we have limits as far as how many kids we have on the bus. And I don't think we'll have those limits next year, but we don't know for sure. And we can't, add 10 or 20 buses to our fleet in order to make it work with social distancing guidelines. So that's one barrier, to doing that for this coming year.
And I understand that some discussion as to it, but from somebody just looking at this, you got kids already going to the middle school. What's the bus still has to go there. There's
Right.
one more bus got to go there. So saying it's a transportation issue is hard for me to digest, because you already got kids going there. You already got kids being dropped off there and picked up there. So why not have a bigger school with more classrooms to have more kids at that building than some of the other buildings, and spread out kids more? So
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's perfect, but it's just hard for me to take into that, wrap my mind around it when we already have things going on there, and how can we make it, instead of saying no, we can't do it, let's see if we can make it work.
Yeah, and the other factor that's part of that is that we have several buses, for example, that are taking elementary kids to Burnside, and then they go back out right away to get the 7 through 12 kids over to the high school. If we added some extra routes to get those Burnside kids over to Twin Bluff, it's let's say a 15-minute ride each way. And so then all of a sudden we're adding 30 minutes, and we make the starting time for the schools in the morning and the ending time for the schools in the afternoon even wider than where we are now, because we need that time to shuttle kids from the outlying elementary schools into the Twin Bluff. So that's the other factor, is that, we could make something like that work, but we might be adding somewhere between 30 minutes and 60 minutes within the student day to make it happen. That's my understanding anyway.
And Anna.
I have some questions about like what the financial aspect of this is going to be, like the pros and cons of this. So we have some additional costs, right? Like potentially adding a playground at the middle school. There were lunch expenses for the high school. Are there other things that, again, like, because kind of going back to my earlier comments, I'm just concerned that by making this decision, we're locking ourselves into other things that we may not have necessarily thought about. And I assume that you guys have thought about them, but if you could just help me think through them, that would be great. What other expenses are we going to have if we stick with this and are going to a fully in-person situation?
Sure, and I'll jump in and answer your question, Anna. The two biggest drivers, regardless of the grade configurations, would be staffing and building operations, or how many buildings we have. So assuming Jefferson is not used next year, the building operation costs will be roughly the same, because we'd have the same number of buildings just serving different kids. So I think that part is neutral. In terms of staffing, I think that it will be not more expensive doing K6 and 7 through 12. There could be some cost savings because we won't have as many shared staff between the previous, like the middle school and the high school that we've had in the past. We may have some more flexibility because all the 7 through 12 teachers are, well, almost all of them would be licensed as 7 through 12 teachers, so we aren't filling gaps as much as we are now. So it could be cheaper in that way. The The one negative to having neighborhood schools would be there could be different class sizes within a particular grade. So for example, Sunnyside has smaller classrooms, let's say for 5th graders, than the middle school does. And so that may mean that the middle school or the Twin Bluff class sizes are slightly higher. I will say that I feel a lot better now than I did 15 years ago when thinking about neighborhood schools, because our transportation people can draw the maps and at least try to even them out as much as possible. So I'm not as concerned about that as I used to be. I do think that we would save some on transportation costs. So there may be some like an extra oven, some extra tables for the high school cafeteria, but I think we'd also realize some savings on transportation and possibly some other areas.
It's definitely a piece to consider. Other questions for Chris, Karsten, or George? I do understand the urgency to make some plans moving forward. I do know that you've worked hard to vet all sorts of ideas. I know that I've seen your bulletin board. I know that this isn't the only option that you've considered. And so I would look for a motion to adopt the following grade configurations for 21-22. And I do want to put an asterisk back there behind that, because we know that everything is fluid right now. Everything has to be flexible, but I do know that you need some sort of springboard or starting place to be able to plan for next year, knowing that it could all change. But you do need to move forward with some sort of plan. So I would look for a motion, knowing that we just have to keep in the back of our minds that we might have to be flexible. And I know that your fear, Anna, is that if we approve this today, we're locked in. But I think that we can always amend, right? A plan moving forward. This is just a starting place to be moving forward for the fall. Is that correct, Karsten? I mean, we're not going to like open or close whole buildings. That's not what I'm talking about, but we might have to switch around maybe K through 5. I mean, we might have to switch around things as you get deeper into the dive.
Yeah, I think, if and when the board, approves that recommendation, then that would be our operating assumption moving forward. But we're always open to adjustments. And I remember last summer after the governor, came forward with the safe learning plan, we went into it knowing that we had to do hybrid. We had to have small class sizes spread out throughout the district. And, I'll tell you what, we were completely committed to having specialist teachers rotate between the different classrooms at all the elementary schools. That's what we started with. But in the end, the only way it could work in a hybrid situation was to have those specialist teachers serve as, paired, with other classroom teachers. That was the only way it would work, because we did not want one specialist teacher to visit 7 or 8 classrooms during COVID, because then that would increase the risk of transmission. And so that's why we went back to, we wanted to follow social distancing and hybrid, and we had the special serve as paired teacher. Well, if we're in person, the game is different. Then, we'll go back to what we were hoping to do, for this year, and make every effort to get the specialist teachers to provide, their teaching in their area. So, that's what we're committed to, but we'd go into it assuming that, we're going to do K6 and 7-12 with some adjustments along the way in terms of who does what in that grade configuration.
Is anyone comfortable making a motion at this time?
Madam Chair, I'll make the motion to adopt the following grade configurations for the 21-22 school year. Sunnyside School, K through 6, Burnside School, K through 6, Twin Bluff Middle School, or I'm sorry, not middle school, Twin Bluff School, grades K through 6, Jefferson School, K through 6, if board approves use of this building, and Red Wing High School, grades 7 through 12.
All right, motion made by
I'll second it.
all right, motion made by Arlen, seconded by Jennifer. Any other discussion?
Yeah, Madam
Jim?
Chair.
Yeah.
I like the idea. But I don't think I'm comfortable with the answer I got about could be 30 to 60 more minutes of transportation until about 6th grade. But I think that 6th grade band is a topic that's going to rear its ugly head down the road because we do offer it. I was more comfortable waiting for the 2 weeks to make this decision, February 1st, than tonight. So I did not get an answer I'm comfortable with on my question. So I'm not opposed to this, but I'm opposed to approving it tonight. So I'll be voting no.
Arlen?
Yeah, I just want to make it clear that I do expect, even though I made this motion, that our specials will be in our schools, probably moving around a little more than what they are right now, but I expect that we still will be having them specials going to the school, and we'll figure out a way to get that accomplished. I think it is doable because regardless of how we do this, we're going to have roughly the same number of sections of school, be it as it are. I think we were probably running 7 or 8 sections of each grade. So the specials still would have to come in there and do that because our teachers still need their prep time and stuff too. So I'm going into this with my motion expecting that we will have the specials still continuing basically as what they have been in the past.
Jennifer?
I just want to echo Arlen a little bit. I second that I trust that our administrators have thought about this. You know, they need us to pass this in order to actually put a plan into place as to what is going to happen with the specialists and 6th grade band. And I trust that they know that that's important for our kids and our families. And they have mentioned that in their presentations, that it's something that has been considered. And, you know, I believe that it will continue to be a priority to provide these specials for our kids. So I think just voting on this tonight and approving this will give them the chance to make some of those more detailed, specific plans moving forward for our kids.
Thank you, Arlen and Jennifer. I completely agree with both of you. That is my full expectation as well. You've got a lot of great resources at your disposal, along with some great staff that I'm sure can come up with some really great plans in order to make sure that 6th grade band continues. However that looks, it might be different for 1 year, but if we miss that crucial year of development of 6th grade band, then you know, future bands down the road are going to suffer, and I would hate to see that. So that is my expectation as well. So the motion on the table is made by Arlen, seconded by Jennifer. Any further discussion? Any more discussion? Any further discussion? So the motion is to adopt the following grade configurations as listed by Arlen earlier for the 21-22 school year. We will start a roll call vote with Mr. Bryant.
No.
Mr. Derricks.
Aye.
Ms. Ostendorf.
No.
Ms. Tift.
Aye.
And chair votes aye. So that passes 3-2. We appreciate your time,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Nemenich. Palmetier for joining us this evening and giving us an opportunity to ask questions, and definitely let us know how that planning is going, and we look forward to hearing all the details.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next on our agenda is school board structure. Karsten, I'm gonna pass this to you. You've got more background on this than I do.
Sure.
If
Early
needed.
last fall, we did approve a resolution to have virtual meetings because of the pandemic. And so we've been conducting our board meetings as well as committee meetings virtually since then. At first, we struggled. Undoubtedly, I remember the first meeting that we had in the high school cafeteria. We had feedback. We weren't able to log in. I think things are going a lot better now because of the way we handle Google Meets and then live stream at YouTube. So in terms of virtual meetings, I think we're doing a very good job. However, we've had some discussions about the possibility of going to either in-person meetings or hybrid school board meetings. And in my mind, a hybrid school board meeting would enable board members to be physically present in a building together, but then also allow board members to participate virtually if they so choose. So that's how I define hybrid meetings. In-person meetings would require all board members to be physically present. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to share their voice or their vote. Anyway, I met with the technology team. Lisa and I met with the technology team to kind of look at both of those options. And we really tried to come up with a hybrid solution that made a lot of sense. So we took out our Chromebooks and our headsets and experimented with that. We also looked at using what's called an OWL, which is a technology device that you can put in the center of a group of people, and then as somebody speaks, the device will hear the voice and then point the camera at the person, so that you can broadcast that on the internet, and so you can see people talking if they're in person. So we tried all sorts of different possibilities with that, but we ran into barriers in the ways we were doing it. And in the end, we concluded, in order to minimize the wasting time during board meetings, we concluded that if we did something like a hybrid model, that it would probably be best just to have school board members present in the room along with Ann Jacobson, the newspaper editor. Because you always want to try to give access to, our local newspaper to provide coverage and transparency to the public. But then have, some people could still participate virtually. And of course, the public could still see everything and hear everything virtually. But we concluded that it'd be best just to have school board members and Ann Jacobson, present in the room. So I could go into all sorts of details about why, but it just felt like everything single step, we couldn't either hear people or we were too close together, and it became incredibly complicated. So that's the thinking. If we do want to go to hybrid meetings, the suggestion is to just have board members who want to be physically present, along with the newspaper editor, to be in the room, but still allow other board members to participate virtually. It's not as great of a solution as I had hoped, but that's what we're thinking to start with, if the board chooses to do that.
And Karsten, can you talk about where the in-person meetings would be taking place?
Yeah, the COVID response team initially suggested that we conduct them at the middle school cafeteria because it's a large space that's not used by others on a regular basis. We could do it in some locations at the high school, but we have plays involved. We have, other groups using the cafeteria and those kinds of things. if we're confident that we'd have very few board members meeting in person, or, in a hybrid situation, then that gives us a lot more flexibility, because we can certainly fit 4 or 5 people easier than another option. However, if we did not allow the public to come to the in-person part of it, that opens everything up, because if we have our Chromebooks and headsets and we aren't trying to project out to the public in the audience, then we can be spread apart, even though we're meeting in the same room. So that kind of opens the door for almost anything. So it depends on if we allow the public to be part of the meeting or not.
Yeah. Well, and to be clear, the public is always invited to be a part of the meeting. They would just be invited in virtually, because that will still be live streamed.
Correct.
Public comment will still be allowed virtually. It would just be the 7 of us plus Carson plus Ann in a room at the max.
Right. And that would be up to 7, because in a hybrid, we'd allow board members to participate virtually or in person.
Yes. All right. Anna, were you in the queue?
Would there be an option, since it's being live streamed anyway, if people wanted to come in person, that to be able to broadcast it somehow in that space? I'm just thinking, like, if somebody wanted to come for public comment, if there's a way to kind of set them up in that space. Do you know what I mean? Like, if we were in the middle school cafeteria, can they be in the middle school entryway with a Chromebook or something like that? I mean, would there be maybe some solutions like that we could look at? I don't know that's, I think people would probably be fine with just calling in, but, it removes at least some barriers, if people don't have the technology to be able to call in for public comment.
Yeah, we considered that as well. And, we were having some problems with feedback with a lot of this, because if we were speaking into the OWL, which could be broadcast out to anybody in the area, then we were getting feedback, like on our headsets. And so that wasn't working out very well. We talked about having literally the board members meeting in one part of a room with a screen on, kind of separating the public and the board members, just so that we can get the audio out, so we didn't have the feedback. But then we thought, well, what's the point of having people, in the building if they can't even see the board members easily? And you can angle it out in different ways. But it seemed like we just ran into barriers. In terms of technology usage, we could have members of the public come in and actually use our Chromebooks and our headsets to participate and still be in the area. The problem, though, is that then we have to clean the computer, we have to clean the headset, we have to worry about if people are using the bathrooms and where they're sitting, those kinds of things. So we can make some of these work. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it just felt like it wasn't as advantageous as just having distance or just having in person.
I very much appreciate, in our board packet, Lisa Stigurda has compiled meeting structures in other districts. So I very much appreciate that. It looks like all but in the Big 9, all but Mankato is moving to all in-person meetings. In Goodhue County, everyone's pretty much virtual, or Lake City and Zumbrota, Mazeppa is doing hybrid. So I think go ahead.
I think Jim mentioned that in a different conversation that perhaps Goodhue is going to in-person meetings in the near future. So some of this is changing as times go on, but that's the answer that Lisa got when she contacted those schools. So at that time they were virtual.
Yeah, Superintendent Anderson's correct. Well, at the time they asked, it's up to that. That was current that time. But speaking with a school board member in Goodhue, they're looking at going to in-person starting next Monday. So now that could change too from the last time I talked to that board member a week ago. But it's very interesting on the Big Nine how many are going back into in person, and Mankato is the only one other than us staying virtual. So interesting information.
Is there a consensus on where we should be going from this board in terms of meeting hybrid, virtual, or starting in person sometime in the near future? How are people feeling right now?
Chair, I was in the queue.
I'm sorry, Arlen, I see you now. Thanks. And then Anna.
Our numbers are coming down, and I'm starting to feel like we maybe are at a point where I would consider meeting in person even for myself. But it does concern me when you start, what are we going to do to allow the public to participate or be in attendance, and how many people we are going to put in the building. I'd like to see a little bit more how some of these other schools are going to do their hybrid or meetings that are coming online to be in person. Are we missing something on how we can make this work and still limit numbers? One of the things I'd like to know, if we could maybe have that sent out to us after the meeting tomorrow or whatever, what is the public, how much of the public is viewing us virtually right now, even tonight and some of our past meetings? Last year at one point we had over 300 people viewing us live with virtual meetings, which is something I would have never expected by going to this. And I think there are a lot of pluses to doing what we're doing here now, but I also understand the sentiment. If we are asking our staff to be in our buildings, why are we not going there, or why aren't we considering coming back? So I get it, but everybody's got different health issues or not issues or whatever, and we have to respect that. But I do not want to see us overload our building and jeopardize the safety of our students the next day either. So I'd like to just learn a little more. I don't want to say no. If somebody's got a recommendation tonight, we should vote on it, I suppose. But how are these other towns doing it? I don't remember what other Big Nine schools it was that were going to this on the 25th, but what technology are they using and what technology are they not using when they do this? So, and who are they inviting to be in person? Are they limiting the number? And so I'd like a little more information, but I'm open to coming back. Thank you.
Anna and then Jim.
I agree with pretty much everything you said, Arlen. I think because of the COVID situation, I think it would be important for us to keep at least a hybrid option. I've had to quarantine for 2 weeks. It's a little different, the quarantining for 2 weeks or longer, than it is, you know, if you, in previous years when you might have like the flu and need to miss a meeting. Having to quarantine for 2 or more weeks might mean that you miss, you know, multiple meetings. And so I would hate to see that happen. So I would like us to stay with at least a hybrid option. I think there is, you know, as you mentioned, a benefit to us going back to, you know, meeting in person when possible, because we are asking others to do that. And I think that if I'm not willing to meet in person, I should not be voting for other people to have to be in person. And then I have a question. What is the city currently doing? Are they still I know that they were doing some changes to the city council chambers, and I wonder if that might at some point be an option for us to use or not, because I know that they're making some alterations with COVID in mind for that. And then when we go eventually someday, hopefully sooner than later, when we're able to be 100% in person for all of us, can we still be broadcasting it out to the YouTube? Because I think that that's been really good for people to be able to be informed and and follow along with what we're doing. I think that helps with the transparency. And before I was on the board, greatly appreciated the ability to be able to watch the meetings that way. So I would like to see us be able to continue with that, even when we're able to be in person again.
If I could answer your two questions, Anna. First, Lisa did contact City Council or the City Hall to see the status of City Council chambers, and they do not have a specific date that they're following in terms of having in-person meetings. So I'm not sure if it's going to be a month or 3 months or exactly, what's going on at the city. I was not aware that they were making some adaptations due to COVID. So I think that's a good thing for us to really look at when we go back to in-person. And the second question has to do with live streaming. I'm confident that we'll be able to find a way to live stream to the public via YouTube in the future. That's by far a better option than what we were doing before COVID, and we'll be able to make that work. It might not give the same personal views of board members because we wouldn't be on a Google Meet where each one of us can be seen and heard, that clearly. But we'd be able to put up a videotape, and I'm sure, somehow get it onto YouTube with a live streaming.
Jim and then Arlen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A lot of good discussion here by everybody so far. I like the idea of the continuing the streaming of our meetings if and when we get back in person. From what we had before, we taped it, then people had to go watch it, and I don't think that was very as productive as we've seen here with technology and how we've done it. I think people want to be informed. That's the best way to give them it at the time that it's going on, and that. So, as to meeting, I'm open to what this board wants to do. I think we should be looking at some point down the road getting back in person, whether in person, hybrid. But some good questions, well, how are they doing a few of those things other than meeting starting on the 25th and all that. But I agree with the comment made that if we're asking staff and students to go back in the school building, we need to take steps to get back in there down the road here. So.
Thank you, Jim. Arlen?
Thank you. Just one other quick thing here. Not only our regular board meetings, but we need to address how we're going to conduct our committee meetings. And not to overwhelm anything, if we're going to jump into live board meetings in person, do we immediately make that change on committee structure, or do we leave our committee meetings virtual for the time being so we don't jump into everything all at once and overwhelm our ideas and trying to make things work? So just throwing that out, that if we're going to make a decision on this, we also have to decide how we're going to address our committee meetings. And I personally believe we should continue virtual committee meetings for the near future regardless. Thank you.
And I'm glad you brought that up, Arlen, because after we passed the resolution to have board meetings meet virtually, I made the assumption that also included all committee meetings of the board. And so since that time, we've been meeting virtually for board meetings and all committee meetings, including negotiation sessions with our employees. That's awkward, but I thought that was following kind of the intentions of the board when we passed that resolution. So I know some of the negotiation groups would really like to meet in person. However, regardless, it's going to be awkward, because meeting via Google Meets is different, but also trying to have socially distanced meetings with 7 to 8 people it's also awkward. So, I'm assuming unless the board decides otherwise, I'm assuming that right now we have all board meetings and committee meetings meeting virtually. But I'll follow the lead of the board, obviously.
Jennifer?
I just had a quick question. If we are meeting in person, even though we're socially distanced, we would still be masked, correct?
Definitely, that would be
Okay.
a requirement.
I think that adds another layer to the meeting. I'm not against going in person. I think it's something we need to look at. I agree with everything that everyone has said, but I think being masked just adds another layer to it. I absolutely, we need to be masked. I'm not at all saying we shouldn't be. I'm just saying that it's nice to be like we are now, so that we can see each other's faces and the public can see our faces. It's just another component to the whole thing.
You are absolutely right that nonverbal communication is so key, and we're missing a lot of that in our society right now. How about we do this? Jim and Karsten and I will meet again next Tuesday. In the meantime, Karsten, why don't you continue working with Lisa on finding the right space and the right technology. When we meet again next week, you can give us an update on that. We'll give the board an update at our next board meeting in 2 weeks. And with a possible move, I'm just putting out there, possible move to in-person the second meeting in February. But we'll continue working on that. Would that be an okay plan with everyone? Head nods. Is that all right?
And I'll add that I'll have Lisa survey the other districts again to get more specific information about technology and whether or not the public can attend, as per Arlen's suggestion.
Or how they can attend and participate. Yeah.
Correct.
Because some of that information is provided in our board packet already. She had gotten some of that, like in Northfield, they're limiting the number of members of public who can attend. So there's a lot of logistics, but hopefully we'll start moving in the right direction. But you're right, Jennifer, that mask piece is something I hadn't really considered. So, I mean, I knew we'd have a mask, but I wasn't thinking about how different that communication will be in a room with not being able to see each other fully. So, all right. We'll continue working on that, and we'll bring an update at the next meeting and keep this on our agenda. And then with that, upcoming meetings and future topics. Many meetings were already mentioned. Finance on the 25th at 4:45. Operations and personnel are also meeting on February 1st, 3:45 and 4:45 respectively. Joint Powers is meeting Thursday. And then our next regular school board meeting will be on Monday, February. No, yep. Is that right? Monday, February 1st?
Yep.
Yes, at 6 p.m. Currently that's listed as virtual, which I believe we will keep. And if we do any changes, it would be that second meeting in February. Any other upcoming meetings or future topics we'd like to address?
I think we have calendar committee. We have
Calendar committee, yep, that's coming
That's
up this
Wednesday?
week.
That's
Yep.
Wednesday.
Arlen, did I miss you in the queue?
No, you found me in time. Thank you. For a future meeting discussion, sooner rather than later, last week we were presented with information about Edgenuity and our online learning. And I think we owe it to our families to make a decision sooner rather than later, whether we're going to force them into Edgenuity in the future. So I would like to see that as a topic in a future meeting. I personally believe that it is wrong for us to push Edgenuity on the online people that chose not to use Edgenuity, and I think we made a commitment to them for a year, and I believe we owe it to them to do that. But if we are going to implement something different in the third or fourth quarter, I think that decision should be made relatively soon. So I'm just asking that be come up in a future board meeting, and I'm not going to say next one, but I hope it's soon. Thank you.
Yeah, that's no problem. And really, there are going to be 3 decisions that we'll need to make this spring and summer. But the first one, as Arlen said, is what do we do for fourth quarter this year? And then later, we need to decide, well, what are we going to do if we have full in-person learning for next year? And then also, what are we going to do if we have a socially distanced learning for next year? Because we may have different ways of addressing each one. So, but first and foremost, I'll talk to George and see the timing of when we can make that decision. If it's at the next meeting, it'll be, I would hope, expect sometime in February.
And Jennifer.
I just wanted to thank Arlen for bringing that up. I completely agree that that needs to be discussed soon. I was just wondering if there's been discussion on asking our distance parents, surveying them on their thoughts on Edgenuity or how distance learning is going, and if that could be done soon before we make a final decision on it.
Jennifer, I'll talk to George. I'm not sure the status of collecting feedback, but I'll find out from George.
I think that's a key component that needs to be addressed and information received. So thank you for bringing that up, Jennifer. Any other upcoming meetings or future topics? All right, seeing none, I will look for a motion to adjourn.
I will make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second. Motion made by Jennifer, seconded by Jim. Any discussion? No. We'll take a roll call vote. Mr. Derricks?
Aye, I'm gone.
Ms. Astendorf?
Aye.
Ms. Tift?
Aye.
Mr. Bryant?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. We are adjourned at 7:46. Thank you, everyone. Have a great
Have a nice
evening.
night.
Good evening.
Stay
Bye now.
warm.